All right, fixed it.
Yay, we fixed it.
Yay.
You guys didn't do shit.
Hello, I alerted you to the problem. Excuse
Actually,
you.
Graham was the first person who thought about the troubleshooting of having one of us listen to the stream to check to see if you're being trolled or not. So.
Well then, thank you, Graham. Anyway, Jack Attack. Now, Graham, now that people can hear you, we were talking about Archon mode. Thank you. We're glad to have you here. Jack Attack, how you doing?
Fucking great, man. Starcraft is moving forward in a fantastic direction, and lots of discussion is being discussed in various levels of constructiveness, and I'm looking forward to abnormally constructive discussion today.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. One topic we didn't mention, one of the main reasons we brought Jack Attack on, actually, and he wasn't announced, is we're going to get into the macro mechanics discussion. That's actually where we're going to kick things off today. So really happy to have Jack Attack here. Jeff, how you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. I unfortunately have a little bit of a headache right now, but it's not the end of the world. And I'm about to leave for England tomorrow, and I'm a little bit sad because my travel is never just like once a month. It's always just fucking... It's like, I don't wear pants when I'm at home, so I won't wear pants for like a whole month, and I'm like, oh, wow, I've got the life. I'm doing so good. And then, you know, and this is like, by the way, guys, first world problems up to wazoo, so don't think I'm sitting here, like, complaining about something super legitimate, but, like, then for whatever reason, my gigs will be weekend. It's like 4 in a row, and it's never just a weekend, it's the 2 or 3 days before and stuff like that. So I've got like the pre-month of travel depression going on where I'm looking around and I'm like, I like my desk, and I like my chair.
Are you doing Gfinity?
Am I doing Gfinity? Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Going to England tomorrow for that. Then I have something next week that I'll be at. And then, I mean, the thing is, too, I do this to myself. Like, I'm going to go hang out with my friends in San Diego in 2 weeks. Like, I'm driving down for a Warhammer thing. But it's like, oh, gosh, gotta go to San Diego. You know, it's just very minor complaints. I'm fine. But the really important news, and really the whole reason we're all here, is next Tuesday I'll probably be getting my Warlord Titan, which just has me... It's got me happy. It's got me super happy, and I can't wait to hold it forever.
Yeah, I was gonna actually.
Is this like a really big? Is this like a really big?
23 inches tall, Steven, 50 pounds of resin beauty.
Is it actually like a playable piece, or is it just?
It
like
is. But for example, like every tournament game I've ever played is 1,850 points, so that's what you use to construct your army. That single model is 2,750 points. So when people are like, "Is it playable?" I'm like, "Yeah, it totally is." But I've, you know, in 17 years of playing, never played a game that big. But there are games that big. I'll just once I have that model, you bet your fucking ass I'll be playing some games that big.
Well, I imagine it's just like the fucking cool factor too, right? Like...
Oh yeah, it's amazing. I will show it off to everyone, and I know nobody. Well, 3% of people will give a rat's ass, but as far as models go, it looks absolutely amazing. You guys will think it looks cool.
All right,
but
so
yeah, that's my first world complaints, and my privileged middle class white person excited about a giant model that's overly priced.
All right, I ask you a question about this thing every week, so I have a new question.
Mm-hmm.
When you're playing a game, is it like Magic the Gathering where you just pull out a card when you're going to use it, so you just turn to the side and say, "I play this fucker," and slam him down on the desk, or?
No, the best way to think about it is like, it's like think about like a squad-based RTS where you can't make new units necessarily, even though that is technically something you can do in the game. But you don't have a base. You just have a starting location, and every table is different. Like, you interact with the terrain.
Mm-hmm.
You interact with, on turn 1, there can be nighttime, which gives a certain level of cover save. Like, there's so many rules and so many nuances to it that it's... For me as an RTS player, it's like a dream because it's the most complex, you know. Whereas like StarCraft is physical speed with your hands, this game is like mental speed and memory with you. So the better you are, the more you've practiced and the more you know. But no, there are cards, there's psychic powers and stuff like that, but they're not so random as like, I drew this one and this is what it does. It's more like, I did randomly generate this power within reason off a table of 6, and then it takes this to cast it and has this effect on your guys, and you have this defense against it.
So if you're going to play Warlord Titan in the game, people know it's on the battlefield.
Yeah, the other thing too, though, is like, so in a tournament, well, yeah, you like part of the etiquette of the game is you hand someone a list at the beginning of the game, and you say, "Here's my list. And then everyone has questions because there's like 13 or 15 races at this point, and inside of those races, there's formations, factions, detachments. There's special characters that can be allied to this faction. Like the complication and complexity is through the roof. So not everyone knows everything, and that's kind of a fun thing. But some people know more. So there's no secret unit at all, but there's different ways for that unit to enter into the game or start on the game and that kind of stuff. So the etiquette is you explain it pretty well to each other at a tournament, and then the surprise comes when they don't know exactly how it interacts with everybody else.
Cool. All right. Last but not least, Destiny. How are you?
I'm great, buddy.
Good. Always so simple with you. I like it. One other thing, if you want to post questions and you want them read, you can post them here. I learned a lesson last week that the lower we get into that question thread, the shittier the questions get. So vote on the questions you like, and
Is that how Reddit works? I had no idea.
No, that's not how it works at all.
And then post the questions that post them now so they can get some votes for me to address them. Anyway, let's kick this off. Enough dilly-dallying with the pre-show. Jack Attack,
Hello.
Jeff, Graham. I'm just saying your names because I forgot where I was going. So we're going to talk about the macro mechanics. If you don't know what is happening, Blizzard is proposing the change of removing injects, nerfing the mule.
Autocasting injects.
Oh, is it just autocast? Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
autocast injects, nerfing the mule, and then increasing the energy cost of Chrono Boost. Now, I'm going to send this to Jack Attack first because I know this is something that he's just been balls deep in for since the announcement came out.
Super balls deep.
Let's see. I actually want to ask Jeff a question. When it comes to these, when it comes to these mechanics that they're talking about, these specific ones, when you see the suggestions they have made, do you think that still maintains asymmetric balance for the economies of each race and how they'll play with each other?
No, I think they're fairly apples to oranges. Like I feel like the idea of calling them macro mechanics and then just lumping them into the exact same category is a little bit. It's simplifying things by quite a bit. I absolutely agree that it is taxing to Zerg players in particular to manage their queens, to have those injects on point. It has a pretty direct hit to the Zerg player itself. The really good Zerg players always have like that magical plus 15 units that we're like, where the fuck did those guys come from? And it's because they're really on top of their macro mechanic. Whereas for Terran and for Protoss in particular, it's a lot more forgiving and it's a lot more, I don't want to say explosive because obviously Inject has its own explosive production quality, but if you like skip beats with Inject, that's like actually affecting you over time. Whereas with Protoss, unless you hit 200 energy, or Terran you hit 200 energy, which almost never happens at a competitive level until like much later in the game, I guess. There's always going to be that like, oh god, well I forgot, I have 3 mules. Let's drop those 3 mules, and then all of a sudden your economy explodes as long as the base isn't overly saturated. And for Protoss, it's a little bit more important earlier on in the game, but as it goes on, that too is like an afterthought kind of, well, I've got 4 Nexus, like 3 of them are in full energy and 1's close to it. I just made a round of Adepts or Zealots, what have you. I'll just spam it through my gateways because I've got all my upgrades already good to go. I do think that they have a place in the game. Like call down supply is one of the most overlooked things I think Terran can use, but of course scan and mules. They're only talking about mules, so I'm not going to get too far off subject. But I do think mules have a place in the game. Are they too strong? I don't know. It's like it's something I guess worth looking at, but I don't think that's at the top of anyone's mind. Like it's more of like a sarcastic afterthought where people are like, "Oh, fucking mules," you know. And there's a couple of stories of Terran players who like got down to 2 or 3 SCVs and clawed their way back in the game because of mules. But it's really not something that is, I don't think anyone's looking at and pointing to as saying this is making the game worse. And then for Protoss, Chrono Boost is a kind of cool mechanic, but a really soft one. Like there's nothing that's like if he hits the Chrono Boost, if he fucking he did it, he hit the Chrono. You know, like there's nobody that's saying that because it doesn't. It's more just like, and I like this comment from actually Noni, who said this in a chat on Team Liquid, who's talking about how like, if anything, it's kind of a cool idea of looking into where the Protoss wants to go with their build and their strategy, and it has a little bit of effect, of course, but that too is a pretty soft impact. So that really, so I look at all this and I'm saying, well, okay, what are they talking about then? And in their language, they want to make the game a little bit more simple, a little bit less taxing on the player. That's really only Inject. That's only inject they're talking about. So I feel like they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. And inject is something that you definitely could make easier, I guess, but there's actually not really a good fix, at least not the proposed ones. Auto-injecting 2 or 3 larvae, which is what they proposed, to come off that hatchery is insanely powerful, like ridiculously powerful. That's gonna raise the tide of the water for all Zergs quite a bit, and then that saves the energy for the queens to have more transfusions, more tumors, and it's one less task. So, is Zerg suffering so much, especially in Legacy of the Void, that we need to do that? I don't think so. Will it make Zerg players at the lower level better? Yes, it will. I believe it will. So, if that's okay with you on either, like, I don't have a strong feeling either way, but that's where it is, I feel.
Okay, so that's a good preface to get us into this topic and where we're going, with these different ideas. Jeff has some pretty well thought out opinions on that. Jack Attack, taking it to you now. What are your thoughts on just the general concept of what has been proposed? So not specifically each race, but what is your thought on the overall concept of changing those mechanics?
Okay, so I want to get some language things out of the way in the beginning so that we're talking about this as constructively as we can. First off, I think that it's making the argument of like, oh, this is making the game easier is not specific enough to be useful. We need to consider, is this making the game easier? For who? In what situations does this make the game easier? In what way? Is it an interesting way? Is it not an interesting way? Just saying like, oh, they're dumbing down the game in a general way is not particularly constructive, and I don't think we're going to get anywhere talking about that. The other thing, there's been this sort of miscommunication about macro mechanics, where people will start having arguments about macro mechanics, and they'll start lumping in producing things with producing larvae. With units with larvae and producing, the Terran macro cycle and all these other things, when really what we're trying to discuss here are 3 very specific things, which is, chrono boosts, injects, and mules. That's it. That's all we're talking about right now. That's all Blizzard is considering changing. So going into the slippery slope of, oh my god, everything's going to be automatic and we're going to be playing Desert Strike is not particularly useful to talk about. So as far as balance is concerned, I'm not really qualified to talk about balance. I don't ever really talk about balance. I'm not really interested in balance. At this point in time, I'm more interested in making the game engaging and enjoyable and thinking about those kind of ideas. So to do that, I think that the best way to do it is to consider, where were we in Brood War? You had to box your worker every 17 seconds, and then they introduced auto mine and multiple building select along with a number of things, to the outrage of many players. And Blizzard introduced, like, the reason why these macro mechanics are in the game is because Blizzard introduced them as a sort of, okay, we need players to look back at their base. That's sort of the central focus of, or function of macro mechanics, is to give players a reason to look back at their base, because that forces the multitasking and the sort of unique, sort of feel to playing Starcraft. And I think a lot of RTS, but mostly Starcraft, right? And then Chrono Boost was one of these things, right, where initially it was called the Dark Pylon or the Obelisk, and all that it did was do this massive AoE. It had 2 other abilities that weren't involved with macro, but it had this massive AoE that would make workers mine 1 mineral extra per trip. And right before we hit beta, that was in the alpha, right before we hit beta, the Dark Pylon or the Obelisk was changed into Chrono Boost. I think that Chrono Boost is probably, out of all 3 of these things, one of the coolest macro mechanics, because it's a decision. There's a decision there, and it's a more complex decision than where do I spend my time or where do I use my attention, because that is involved with all macro mechanics. Macro mechanics are, again, a reason for you to look back at your base, and there's lots of reasons for that. So with Chrono Boost, it's sort of like, first of all, it's visual, you can see it, it's scoutable, so your opponent can react to it, and it creates these interesting interactions, and you choose what's going on, at least in the beginning of the game. Like Jeff was saying before, when it gets towards the end, you're just like banking up tons of them. You're like, all right, well, I just produced, I guess I'll Chrono Boost a bunch of things. So, maybe there's some changes there that could be better. The idea of Chrono Boosting less often and having more of an impact, maybe that'll be a nice thing. But I think, again, like Jeff said, it's about inject more than it's about anything else. A big part of the discussion is about inject, because inject, and this is generally agreed upon, is the least decision making out of the three, and there's almost no decision making. If you have a queen that has energy next to a hatchery that's not injected, you pretty much inject it, or you're going to fall behind. So I think that the discussion should be framed around the idea that what can we do to give players a reason to look back at their base that has interesting decision making involved in it, and isn't this rote thing. I think that the inject is very, very analogous to the box your worker and send it to mine, box your worker and send it to mine, much, much more so than the Chrono Boost is. And the mule is kind of like an in-between thing. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
So if we look at the inject, and this is my opinion on the situation, there is a reward. If you look at the TVZ matchup, there is a reward for what you can do early game that takes the Zerg's focus away from managing his economy to handle whatever you're doing. So if you decide you're going to put on early pressure, right, you sacrifice your economy, you don't go for 3 bases, you get some early units, and you're going to go play, the game against the Zerg, trying to get some drone kills, whatever. He gets distracted. He screws up his injects. That then affects how many drones he can produce. That affects how many more units he can produce to defend you. So you get a reward by forcing him to not be able to maintain that. But the skilled Zerg is able to maintain those injects, and then he is rewarded for maintaining that skill. I see that's the correlation between, if you look at the macro. Jeff, you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I think what's hard for Zergs, though, is that it's not just inject. Like, inject is incredibly important, but it would take I don't know, this is obviously arguable, but spreading your creep is, like, just as important to be a good Zerg in many ways. So it's like a really tough situation where I feel like if you do oversimplify one way or the other, the Zerg gets a lot better, but at the same time, I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing for Zerg, because as it is, they definitely, everyone would agree with this, are the most busy race of the game by a lot, and it's really hard for those low-level players, and the really good players make it look amazing.
And I think that creep is not being brought up at all in this, because creep is probably the coolest fucking macro mechanic that Blizzard has ever come up with. It's awesome because you're syncing APM and looking away from the battle for a spatial advantage, which is not, you're not like looking away from the battle for an advantage so that you can have more stuff than your opponent, which I think is the least interesting advantage. Where Chrono Boost, it's a time advantage where you get things faster, and that involves planning, and that involves making things hit in a certain time. And that's something that Starcraft 2 utilizes more than pretty much any other game. Like, you can talk about timing attacks in a MOBA, like, oh, check it out, we're playing Heroes of the Storm. We hit 10 before they hit 10, so we have a timing attack. It's really, really weak version. Starcraft has this, like, amazing, fantastic, like, ability to manipulate time and space. That is, like, the job of a Starcrafter, is to manipulate time and space. And it's sort of like having this spatial APM sync that gives you an advantage on certain positions in the map and also gives you vision is so cool. And it's awesome and visual to spectators, too, because they can see, oh my god, the Zerg is playing really well. Look at how like overgrown the map is with their creep. And I mean, even on top of that, it sort of feeds this like, I don't know, sort of fantasy of the Zerg of like taking over.
All right, so
a certain area, you know?
Let's pull back to inject. Destiny, you had a thought a second ago. There was like you and Jeff at the same time.
Yeah, so one of the things that for Jack Attack, one of the ways that you're looking at this is in terms of like decision making and all of that, which is a valid way to look at some things that go into the game. But injecting could just serve to be a simple mechanics check, which exists in some things. When people talk about things like Brewbor and people talk about things like Starcraft 2 and you compare differences between the game and whatnot, I know that this argument got brought up a lot when you talked about multiple building select. Resources in the game, time is supposed to be viewed as a type of resource. If you have your screen, like, why can't you zoom out and look at everything, right? Well, if your screen is on one thing, it's not necessarily on another thing. So I think that looking at injecting is a bad thing simply because there's not like a decision to make there, which I agree, there's not much decision making there. And then looking at it as a bad thing only because of that, I feel like that doesn't really, it's not really what injecting is about. Like, it's not supposed to be there as a decision maker. It's more just like a mechanics check. You know, like, are your mechanics good? Well, then you get this advantage, and if not, then you get cards.
The thing is, though, like, that's like true of every single macro mechanic. It's a reason to look back at your base. It's a taxing on your attention, so you can't look at it. Is there not a more interesting replacement for inject?
Well, first of all, that statement, that's not really true at all. If you miss, this might sound balanced whiny, but I don't think it is. Actually, Jeff brought this up already. Terran can be a little bit lax on mules and then take a new base and drop a fuck ton of mules and be okay, right? There is an opportunity cost to not getting those resources earlier, of course, right? Like you don't get to do that for free. Like that does hurt. But you don't get punished anywhere near as hard as like a Zerg player would get punished. For missing injects, which can cost will cost you the game if you miss injects. So I don't agree that all the macro mechanics necessarily serve the same purpose there. And like
no,
said,
that's not what I was saying, that they're all the same in purpose. I'm just saying that's their commonality in that they make you look away. They're all macro mechanics are a drain on your attention resource. So why can we not have a Zerg macro mechanic that has a drain on your attention resource, just like the other macro mechanics do, like creep, but it's more interesting decision. It gives the player agency and allows them to sort of give them more options and have more control over their experience, rather than like, this is something I have to do. There's no other way about it. It's just, I just have to inject, which from a player perspective, I don't think is particularly engaging.
I mean, it's not engaging. We're getting into we're getting into super abstract stuff now, because now you're talking about moving StarCraft away. We're moving it away from a game that's heavily centered in mechanics, which it is right now, right? StarCraft is very heavily centered in mechanics, into more of a strategy game, and to do something like, to take something like injecting and then to get rid of that and then turn that into something that introduces agency or gives you options or whatever. You're kind of like, I feel like at that point you're completely repurposing what injecting is, which is just a mechanics check. It's like throwing a free throw in basketball, right? Like those are pretty boring. Like you throw it and you either make it or you don't. Like there's no decision there. The basketball player doesn't have to choose, like, am I going to make this free throw or am I going to miss it? Like you shoot and you hope you hit it. But like no one would ever talk about like we need to get rid of free throws because they're boring or they don't present agency. Well, no, it's a mechanics check. Like if you make free throws, you've got really good history of shooting free throws. Like that's hype as fuck when you get a good player who's fouled and he's getting ready to shoot and he's fucking 75% or whatever. I don't know the fucking NBA stats and shit, but like it's just like a mechanics check. Or like kicking field goals in football or whatever. It's just a mechanics check more or less. I don't necessarily agree that we have to like get rid of every single mechanics check to try to turn it into like some kind of decision. Like I already feel like we've kind of gone too far down that route, because people are complaining about like, well, now every single new unit is a spellcaster, and I feel like I'm playing like a huge MOBA where every unit is like a hero, and I've got like Ravager spells and Disruptor spells and Liberator siege mode and like all this crazy shit,
I totally agree, but the thing is, there's a difference between something that's non-value adding and necessary, like a free throw. The reason why free throw exists in basketball is a check on players being too aggressive and injuring other players and knocking other players down to give them, sort of an advantage of the game. You don't want to promote that play style where it's just sort of like, oh, this guy is definitely going to hit the shot. Knock him the fuck out. There's no disadvantage to it, right? So that's like a necessary thing. I don't feel that inject is a necessary part of the play experience for a Zerg player. Maybe for balance, but design-wise, I don't think it is.
I mean, if you get rid of inject, I feel like you have to change. I feel like you have to go back to the drawing board to balance some things out, because there are some things like the Stefano Roach max, right? Like there are strategies that are built around you being able to execute builds perfectly, and if you can't do it, then you can't do the build. And so like to get rid of injecting completely and to give everybody perfect injects, like that changes so much of the balance. Like there are things like, all of a sudden, I don't care about any Terran opener anymore. Like, if I can dedicate 100% of my attention to defending against the opener, like, I'm never going to miss an inject with Reapers or Hellions fucking me. Or I guess it's Hellbots these days, right? But, like, it's a lot different than it used to be, I guess, right? Where it used to be, like, you'd have the Hellion openings or the Banshees coming in and you try to fuck with the Zerg and you try to throw them off their macro. Well, now you can never throw me off, and I'm not getting checked to see if I can keep, can I keep up with injecting and defending at the same time? Well, that's not a question anymore. Now I just have to defend,
I totally agree. I don't think that the movement of like, okay, let's just get rid of injects completely or make it autocast is a nice solution. I think there may be better solutions, and the discussion in the community should be focused on what's a more interesting replacement for inject, rather than like, okay,
so let's talk about
so everyone can inject easily.
Let's talk about why Blizzard is doing this, right? One of the things they are trying to address is the idea that Legacy of the Void is really hard to play. You talk about all the active abilities that all these different units have. You talk about just a fast pace of the game, expanding, attacking. As David Kim said, one of the pillars of Legacy of the Void is constant action. So with that, it's a very difficult game, and everyone from the Korean pros to the foreign pros has said Legacy of the Void is very hard. It's going to be hard for new players and things like that. So I think what they're trying to do with this is they're trying to take away the things that they believe can be automated or that can be affected so that you're not paying as much attention to those specific. So we're not talking all macro mechanics, we're talking just a few, but that would allow you to spend a little more time focusing on your units. So as Jack Attack's saying, it's not necessarily we're going to do X, Y, and Z and that's it. Like, so they've given 2 suggestions, but they might not be the suggestions they go for in the future.
All of these, this is like a totally valid like thing to go down, but it's just at this point you really are fundamentally off changing the game. I don't know if like some people don't want to see it or don't understand it, but like StarCraft 2 is a mechanics game first, and always has been in Brood War as well. Like
it's more so in Brood War.
To have definitely more so in Brood War. Like you have to have the mechanics in order to do it. If you don't, then it's not like everything else. Nothing else in the game matters. If you don't have the mechanics to execute, I guess to fucking go back to basketball, it would be like trying to teach somebody how to play basketball who doesn't have like arms or doesn't have the upper body strength to actually throw the basketball high enough to get it in the hoop. Like at that point, like how do you even teach that player? You know, so we're talking about to follow it to its extreme absurdity, right? To lower the hoop, I guess, to make it so that everybody can play. But you're looking at like a fundamentally different game at this point. When you start talking about like we need to get rid of all these extra actions and we need to make it so you just have to focus on watching your units walk around and the economy manages itself. We've already got drones that run off to mine automatically. That's, you know, that wasn't Brood War. You know, we've got the numbers that appear over the hatchery, so you know when you can stop building drones. The queens and like I just. Again, I'm not trying to like make fun of anybody, but I feel like you're moving off of like what is StarCraft 2 into like a fundamentally different game that is no longer like a real-time strategy game that's supposed to have a heavy mechanics check behind it. Sorry.
I don't disagree with you, and I think the one thing that kind of has to be addressed, and everyone knows this, and it's not a super amazing thing to say, but like the reason the basketball comparison in particular is not super applicable is because basketball is played worldwide by millions of people. It sells, it's doing fine, whereas with StarCraft, on some level, they have to identify that with this playing audience and people today, again, Stephen, I don't disagree with you. The game should be mechanical, it should be difficult, and I think Blizzard knows that, but they're trying to walk this incredibly weird, nebulous line of like, it's a really difficult game, but not so difficult that everyone could play it if they wanted to, you know? So, like, I think they're looking for little places where, like, they identify that perhaps this is turning off, in particular, the newbies, and this would be good for them because then they'd be able to focus on things like in Blizzard's dream world. I imagine, I don't work at Blizzard, I don't know their thoughts, but my imagination is like the mundane, the stuff that's not flashy. That we StarCraft geeks are like, fucking, that's incredible because he's doing that and the fun stuff. But for everyone else is like, where's the kicking button? You know, like they're yelling. It's like get rid of or minimize the mundane and then exemplify and glorify the more electric stuff, like the actual battle that's going on and stuff like that. So again, I want to clarify, I don't disagree with you, but I think that's the line Blizzard's trying to walk. So they look at Inject and they say, this is a place we could simplify so that players can get their action spent on the more exciting stuff.
Steven, so with what Jeff is saying, so just conceptually, right? So we're not talking Mule, Inject, Chrono, but just saying conceptually, do you see that StarCraft 2 has places where we can make that Blizzard can make these kind of changes and not ruin the fundamentals of StarCraft?
They kind of already have. I know it's not my turn to talk, but like,
no, go ahead.
Get in, man. Get in. It's Rifkin. Mix it up.
Ahead,
like,
Rifkin. Fucking cutting everybody off once again.
Let Moro talk. So
the Rifkin show, he hasn't shut up once this whole time. Good God.
So, like, Blizzard's got this really cool thing called Archon mode they're coming out with, right? And like, we're kind of like, In Control just brought up the whole point of bridging for newbies a little bit, and I kind of feel like that's what that sets the pace for. Like, you've got a buddy to help you learn the game, like side by side, or like it brings coaching to new levels, or whatever the case may be. Hey, literally watch me play first person point of view. But like, I also feel like with high level Archon mode, as well as like the newbie introduction levels, if you cut out a lot of these macro mechanics or make them too easy, I think then what's the second person doing in an Archon mode, right? Like, I really love the way 1v1's competitive and difficult, but like if you got someone who doesn't need to macro, then like you're just both microing in an Archon mode and it's stupid. And I feel like the newbie introduction level is cool. I feel like there's this high level 2. If they want to tweak it, I just feel like a lot of the discussion tends to be like making it too easy. And I'm actually just worried, like, I'm not even talking about specifically Injects or Mules or Chrono. I just hope that whatever they do, they don't overdo it, because like, StarCraft 2 is pretty damn good as is. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's already pretty good.
And I don't even think like I understand the line of thought there. Because I'm not completely stupid. I understand what you're saying in terms of like, well, if we make it a little bit easier, but not too easy, like what Jeff said, right? They're walking the line of, well, StarCraft 2 is too difficult right now. We need to make it easy, but not so easy that people accuse us of being, you know, a MOBA or League of Legends or whatever, right? Whatever the meme joke is, right? But at the same time, like I feel like you could actually enter the proverbial slippery slope where it's like, okay, well now no one has to pay attention to injects. Well, this is fucking bullshit. This guy's so good. He's perfectly fucking microing his roaches against me, or he perfectly blinks stalkers. Why can't there be an option where I can right click on my stalker when it falls with 20 HP just to have it blink back? Like, why couldn't I have something like that? Like, it's just pointing and clicking and just blinking him back. Like, this is stupid. That just because this guy can click and blink faster than me, now all of a sudden he beats me every game. Like, that's bullshit. You know, like I feel like you could start to get into that kind of a world.
Yeah.
Well, I think that there's a difference between the interface basically getting in your way between what it is you want to do. Like, for example, you said, you know, clicking and blinking, that's like 3 actions, right? You click the stalker, you press the button to blink, and then you click on the ground somewhere else. Turning that from, you know, 3 actions into 1 action would, like, turn down the mechanical cost of doing a blink, right? But blinking is about the decision, I think, a lot, of when to blink. Are you blinking in groups? Are you blinking one at a time? Where are you blinking?
No, we're not doing this. No, blinking is a very, very, very straightforward. Blinking is a pure mechanics check, I think.
You don't think there's any positional element at all in blinking?
No, I think it's a pure... I mean, like, maybe if you're doing, like, harassing, like, up and down a cliff, sure. But in terms of, like, when you're actually microing in a fight, it's just... Blinking is only a mechanics check. You're just blinking back, so that they're no longer taking aggro on the front line. Right? Jeff, do you disagree with that, or...?
I wouldn't be so
I'm not trying to say, like...
There's offensive blink forwards. There's
yeah, sure. Yeah, to some extent. Like if you're
for the
blinking,
most part, yes.
To, like, yeah, for the most part, it's just a mechanics check. Yeah.
Sure, for the most part.
Yeah, that's how I would feel as well.
Let's not spend too much time on this though, because I think,
no, I agree. So we might revisit this, but I think overall, final thoughts. Oh, actually, one thing I want to say, and if our boy is watching right now, I would think it would be really cool if Gameheart would detect the first time a queen makes an inject on a hatchery, right? And then something that could be brought up is, you know, when the worker kill thing comes up on the side and says, you know, X number of workers were just killed, something popped up and said, hey, a hatchery just went uninjected for 30 seconds or went uninjected for a minute, because you know that amount of time, that adds up. It's a big deal, and I think it could add, you know, Rifkin, maybe you can comment on this. I feel like that could add a dynamic to the viewer experience.
Guys, jump in real quick.
Yeah.
Is that the worst idea, or is it just like, is it top 5 one of the worst ideas, do we think?
To give it a serious answer though, like, it's worth
you don't want a built-in UI mechanic to count mistakes in a game. You don't want the pro gamers to look worse than they are.
I think it was just saying for like Gameheart as like a metric to keep track of.
I think just like really quick. I think that having a metric of inject percentage would be really good at the end of a score screen, so players can see how well they're injecting.
No!
But
God
not like
damn it,
fucking
you guys.
Okay, listen,
this is the
that's
worst.
not the worst idea. It's not the worst idea I've ever heard, okay? It's not the worst
You
idea.
want a desk of casters at the end of the game to be like, well, you know, guys, thanks to this Gameheart counting mechanic, we can tell that Stefano actually missed 13.5 injects, which is up from the 12.5 he did the game before. Is it time for him to retire? Like, the discussion, the fucking just like, well, obviously he's not.
No, but
oh my
all right,
gosh,
but
it's so bad.
But what I was talking about earlier, the TVZ matchup, right? You have the Terran harassing the Zerg, and you see, look, this is affecting the player in X, Y, and Z way. You see, he's missing injects, he's not making units, blah blah blah.
From a full production perspective, you do not count the mistakes on a UI base that a pro gamer is making.
Try like you
sell them as
of
good players, not really bad.
You kind of do that on like in MOBAs to some extent. People track like who does the most damage on a team, or like who's missed yes or whatever.
Yes, Steven, but not worse. They don't take the opposite. You can deduct that.
Well, but I mean, players will do it. Like, I saw an argument in the league subreddit the other day who was like, I think it was TSM, like, this guy does a higher percentage than any other blah, blah, blah. Why is he carrying the team, and why does everyone else suck on the team? Because he's doing the most percentage of damage. Like, I feel like people can spin it.
It happens. What I'm telling you is you don't build into the UI multiple occurrences where that happens. Those numbers are to talk about how good someone's doing. If they spin that into who's doing bad, that's fine. But you don't build a mechanic that's like, you know what you should have is a number on the lower right-hand side. If you dip below 100 APM, it gets larger. and larger, and then like the guy's like, he's going catatonic. He's literally at 50 APM. This guy's a fucking noob. Just all start yelling at him and shit. Like, no. When APM,
I mean, it already does that when you try to do shit. It's like you have not enough minerals, not enough minerals, not enough minerals. Like, fuck, I know. Holy shit. I just need more roaches. Fuck.
The
I think
idea
it'd be
of
pretty
a
easy to
game
phrase
part.
that in a positive way, though.
Oh god.
Listen, I'm on Team Like It. It's not the worst idea I've ever heard. It's not, okay, I'm partial to Team Jeff. It's a pretty bad idea, but it's not the worst idea I've ever heard, okay?
Okay, wait, hold
so
on.
worst idea I've ever
The
heard.
only thing I want to argue with, is the idea that, like, you sell the players as awesome, right? And I agree, you do. But also, when someone is making them screw up, you point out, hey, look, he's missed, he's supply blocked. He's doing X, Y, and Z wrong because he screwed up.
I can solve the best of both worlds. How about instead, there's a Hearthstone, or no, fucking Hearthstone. There's a game heart counter. I've got that Blizzard game fever. There's a game heart counter that tracks whenever you play against a Zerg. There's a timer that shows how many seconds of injects you made them miss.
All right, and we are done with the topic. Moving on.
No,
I
shut
have
the
a
fuck
good
up.
amendment.
I get to say
I
something on this.
ripped him like 5 times.
Okay, so first off, clearly, In Control doesn't want people knowing how many times he misses a Chrono Boost. We get it, okay? But secondly, you can absolutely build all of these into Game Heart. You could even have a damage meter in Game Heart. I've looked into this. The problem is it eats up so much space, it would cause the players to lag uncontrollably after 5 minutes. So it's not realistic to implement.
See, there you go, guys. It's a bad idea because of technology not being there, but otherwise...
I wish I could have said that at the start.
But that's not even true, because if you broadcast the games on Ding It and you use their unit...
Shut the fuck up.
All right.
Shut the fuck
Moving on. So, if you guys didn't know, if you hadn't heard the news, the streamer Trick2G
Oh god,
performed.
this one went next.
Yep, the streamer Trick2G. I don't even know how to say this. He fake swatted himself. For those who don't know what swatting is, it's when a streamer will get. Someone will call a streamer's local police department and say that something extremely bad that would warn a SWAT team is going on, and then live on stream the guy gets busted in on. And Trick2G decided to fake that. He used a member of his production crew, and
Did they actually call police?
No. So it was member of production crew came in with a gun, tackled him, and that was the end of it.
It is really fake vest that said like SWAT police on it and stuff too.
Production crew. He's a huge streamer or something like that?
Yeah, like he's pretty big. Oh, and if you didn't hear about this, Trick2G is also the guy that tried to copyright Sub Wars, was it?
Tried to?
Or did?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
It's actually copyrighted?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it's fucking stupid.
And he sells the license to like other people.
People bought the license from him?
Yeah, I'm pretty
I
sure
hope
he does. Like,
nobody
he's got a whole
does.
team and whatnot. Yeah, for
Just
doesn't
call
he
it
have, like,
something
a team
else.
where he shares. Well, yeah, maybe he'll. I don't know.
Subscriber wars. Get fucked. Trademarking it.
Yo, I don't know. That stream was so fucking stupid though. Like I saw others he had like fucking girls that I guess they rented or something to just sit in the background the whole time. Some guy came in like a bear costume, like it was supposed to be like some celebration stream or some shit. It was obviously like a big publicity stunt. I can speak, but it just went horribly wrong. And apparently, a lot of rumors were going around. He was banned for like 4 months. He was only banned for like a day, which is kind of stupid.
I heard that he was banned for 4 months, but because of the outcry of his fans, it got reduced to 1 day. But I have no valid sources on.
Either way,
Anybody-
like four months, 1 day.
to 1
like, that
day?
is- but regardless, like either of those are still like a slap on the wrist considering like what got done there, because it's essentially promoting the use of this to like get views. Like all of
Okay.
a sudden, you want to see more people do it?
Okay.
Years in prison, but with good behavior, we'll get you out of here in a week. All right?
So that's the point I want to. That's where I want the crux of our discussion to be. Right? What did he actually do wrong? Because hold on. First of all, he faked it, right? No law enforcement were called, right? Now, maybe Twitch on the back end has some kind of like program where they see people getting swatted. So as soon as they get word of someone getting swatted, they call the local police department like, hey guys, look, it's blah, blah, blah.
No.
No, so hold on. I'm just theorizing here. I'm trying to think from
So-
either they have that or I really can't think from that point on what he did that was bad, because law enforcement don't really get called. No one calls and says, hey, someone just got swatted. The law enforcement's already there, so no kind of emergency services are being disrupted. What does faking it actually do that warrants a ban?
Here's an example of what your question is. If a guy is snorting fake cocaine on stream, but it's not real cocaine, but he's just snorting cocaine for an entire stream, And you're like, but wait, it's powdered sugar, all right, which is legal, and he's just snorting it up his nose, which is his own like. There is no like explicit law that says "Thus shall not fake their own swatting," but in Twitch bylines, they specifically leave it fairly nebulous so that they can crack down on almost anything that they decide to. And this would be under the I would imagine what they used is you're not like the streaming is supposed to be for gaming. It's supposed to be about gaming and it's supposed to be for gaming. If you ask Twitch, that's generally speaking what they do, and that's why they started to crack down on, the cam whoring stuff. Hang on. So if a guy is faking and staging a legal event like that, some kind of law enforcement event, which usually is SWAT team, by the way, when you SWAT someone, then they would just say, yeah, you're encouraging bad behavior, you're not gaming, and your stream is becoming something other than what we actually asked you to do. So you're banned for a day.
Yeah. Okay, that's logical.
If you open up the legal page right now and hit Control F and type kill, there's also nothing about not killing people on the stream. So you probably also shouldn't do that.
But
well, actually, I think
there's like a clause about moral.
Towards the show, I checked. There's nothing about waterboarding in there. Oh, Steven, we're doing it.
Okay, well, hold on. Okay.
$500.
This is so bad. This is like the worst thing ever, okay? Because not only am I almost agreeing with Lycan, I'm also defending Trick2G. I don't really like Trick2G, okay? I fucking hate Trick2G. And almost as much as I hate agreeing with Lycan over anything. Like, this is like a...
than to agree with Lycan, I think, though.
Maybe. I feel like banning someone over this, like, it just seems really weird to, like, even if somebody was fake... Yeah, even if somebody was fake snorting cocaine and they but it was like really fucking obvious. Like if some guy like held up like sugar, like, like, oh, I'm so fucking cocaine out of my mind. Like, do you really like ban that person? You're like, oh no, like you're.
Did you just really do cocaine just now?
I'm not actually surprised that Steven has like a question about this. But yes, Steven, the answer is yes to everything you're proposing. I know you're going to rant and rave and yell about and talk about how bad the government is, but...
It has nothing to do with how bad... it has nothing to do with how bad about the government is. These are historic problems that Twitch has faced over and over and over again. Where what do we ban people for? And they've made their rules like intentionally vague, so nobody actually knows through the line. And we've dealt with issues like this before. Remember Tally getting banned for... Was it for sub giveaways? And then Twitch like decided to go back, and now it's like, well, you can do it maybe if it's legal in your area. And now they don't really care at all because you can kind of. But if they do care, then maybe, right? They've always had wishy-washy policies on like a lot of things. Like, is it okay to watch YouTube videos on stream? Like, have you ever seen the?
It would only be Destiny to be like, what? You can't fake snort cocaine or fake swat yourself? Where do we draw the line? Okay. Where is the line?
Well, all right. I'm not the only one that has these issues. You realize this is like an issue with every single Twitch.
Okay.
No, not me. Twitch. Literally every single person. Phantom Lord has run into these issues. Fucking that. What about that one guy? You said that Twitch is for streaming games. Who's the fucking CS:GO guy that has like a hooker with him on every fucking stream? Like, why didn't that guy get banned? Like, apparently that was okay. All the Phantom Lord shit. Well, apparently that's okay. You know, some people can watch YouTube videos on stream. Some people can't. Some people can get away. You know, Trick2G did something. Did he get away with it because he's got so many subscribers? He only got banned for a day. Like, these are questions that are really important for like the average fucking streamer to know, like, what can I actually do on Twitch? And there are no good answers. So I don't even understand like how you can like laugh at, well, why do you think it's so ridiculous that Twitch is inconsistent, huh? When those are like questions that every single streamer has been asking over the past like however long these things have been happening. Like, look at Twitch hosting poker now. Twitch hosts music events now. Like, Twitch is hosting what was that show?
Like, they have a whole category for creative where you could just like art on stream.
Yeah, this is a really important question that a lot of people have been trying to answer over the past like 6 months, and the area has gotten more and more and more gray as Twitch has for sure like factually stepped more away from gaming into other things over the past 6 months. So I think asking like, well, what can you do on a stream? I think that's a totally legitimate question. And just saying like, well, it's for gaming, it's absolutely not true anymore. Twitch
I 100% agree with the concept that you're arguing, and I also agree that there are absolutely countless times where some of the literally hundreds of thousands of streamers on Twitch have done things that were either unpunished or underly punished or overly punished. I absolutely agree with you. What I'm laughing at, and I hope someday you can look back at 27-year-old Destiny and laugh, which you have done in the past. You've done a lot of things that you laugh at. This will be one of them. It'll be that time where you're like, I can't believe that snorting fake cocaine or faking a SWAT on yourself was ever questioned as bad on Twitch.
So here's the thing is, I think that
pretty clear.
If you look at those, I think that the snorting fake cocaine in my eyes, would be a little worse than the fake swatting. Because if you look at all the things that, look at Steven. Steven has done things where he's sitting on stream, he's doing whatever, and then something will come up, he'll have a discussion with his group. There are people that just pull little stunts and do it. What if Steven and I were fucking running a gaming house together, right? And one day we're just like, hey, we're gonna fake a fight on stream. And it was just a little tiff. It was about a recent meta topic, and that was the end of it, right? It was a fake fight. But for 10 minutes, we were not playing games. We were arguing back and forth, right? It's pretty harmless. And all that. Might have got a few chuckles from some people because people knew it was fake. Whatever. The point is that was not gaming. It wasn't gaming focused, and we probably wouldn't have gotten banned from Twitch. So if you say someone snorting fake cocaine, I can understand why Twitch would say, no, that's fucking shit. So what I want to know is between swatting and cocaine, which I believe the fake cocaine would be worse.
It's gray and nebulous. There's no lines to be drawn.
Athene fake swatted himself and made it look way more hardcore than Trick2G did. Right? Trick2G's, if you saw the video, it was very, very obviously faked. Like, he swung at the cop with his keyboard, he was shouting. I think he laughed when it happened. Like, it was
like
super
on the floor
laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, Athene's was maybe the only thing that gave it away was that he fucking pointed the camera at him. But, like, they came in with, like, a full fucking SWAT vest. They, like, CGI'd in, like, fucking smoke. Or maybe they had an actual smoke machine coming to the camera. Like, Athene's was hardcore. Like, it maybe was a SWAT. Like, people didn't actually fucking know. And with Athene, you never fucking know, right? Whereas and he didn't get into any trouble whatsoever. There was zero fucking blowback from that. So I think it's a perfectly legitimate question. Like, you laugh like, oh, should you do coke on stream or pretend? Like, well, no, not really. But, like, there have been times on stream where I have a cold and I blow my nose and people are like, stop doing coke. And it's like, so what if one time we're like, and I blow my nose, it's like, oh, whatever, like, I gotta get my fucking high. Like, do I get banned for that for 4 days? Like, am I saying that you should be able to set up a stream, like, call it breaking Twitch, and you're doing like a whole demo on coke, and you're like, got credit cards and shit, and then you pretend to snort it, and then at the end you're like, oh, no, it was just sugar. Obviously, I'm not fucking saying that, but there's a reason why you like a lot of things to be black and white, because you want to know, like, what can I actually do without getting punished? And right now, nobody knows the answer to any of that, and I don't think I'm ever gonna look back in 4 years and go, you know what? I'm actually really fucking happy that Twitch was totally fucking gray in all this area, and nobody knew what they could or couldn't get away with. I don't even think 28-year-old, I don't even think 32-year-old Destiny will look back and say, I'm really glad there's a huge gray area.
That's not what I said. I agree with you. I agree with you that it is better black and white. Like, we never disagreed on that.
I'm very much a person who likes to ask permission for things rather than forgiveness. So, like, I agree with the whole, it's nice to know what you can and can't do. But at the same time, the second you outline what you can't do, those same people like Trick2G and others are going to find ways to, like, loophole it or get around it and still... So, I mean, it's I'm not arguing for gray area because I'm not generally a fan of it, but I'm actually kind of happy it exists, because in this instance, like, if there was an exact rule, but he managed to just barely squeeze by, then there's no ramifications. Other people see it's okay and they mimic it. Whereas in this instance, they could be like, no, that was just not cool. Like, common sense, bro. Come on. Like, stuff like that.
But common sense, what? Like, Athene did it, didn't get in trouble for it. Like, everybody that was watching knew it was a joke. Like, what's the takeaway from this? Like, what do you take away from this? If you watch, like, any of the CSGO, like, case opening streams, like, it seems like when the inconsistencies run abound so much, like, it's impossible to know, like, what's okay and what's not okay.
I think we can agree on that.
Full disclosure, by the way, of all of us here, Steven's the only one that's been in trouble with Twitch. So that's why he's like, these questions have a little bit more close to his heart, because common sense to me, who's been streaming for 5 years, has got me in no trouble. I've been fine. It's been a very easy experience. Yep. Steven would tell you he's had a different experience. It's because he does a lot of different things and he pushes the boundaries, right, Steven?
First of all, I'm probably the only... How fucking rude are we gonna get here? I'm the only full-time streamer here, okay? My paycheck comes from streaming. No one else here can say that. Maybe Graham? I don't know how much you make. Okay? But you do tournaments. It's not just streaming. Why the fuck are you guys laughing? You do tournaments. It's not just streaming, okay?
He streams the tournaments.
I was literally...
Okay.
Hey God, I was literally just streaming Archon mode before we came here. Like,
these are issues that everybody in the community has dealt with. I don't know why we're pretending like I'm the only person that's had these issues. Like, go and follow any part of the community that's not just like your own team chat or your own fucking personal forums or whatever. You follow any part of the community. These are issues that everybody in the Twitch community that streams for a living is dealing with. Every single person is dealing with. These aren't just unique Destiny. Oh, it's just oh, it's just Destiny problem. I never got fucking banned. For
I
doing
said
stuff
from
in the
us,
stream,
of us, Steven, not the whole community. Calm down.
Yeah, but we all know what the insinuation was. The insinuation was that I'm fucking flashing my fucking dick on stream all the time. So of course I'm the only one that would be offended that I can't
I'm saying
fake
of
smoke
us
and
that are
the stream.
discussing it. I'm not like there was no scathing thing there. I was saying of the 5 of us, we've all streamed without issue, and you have. And I tried to give you the escapes of like, yes, but you push the boundary. You're a little bit more of like a shock jock type of stuff. Like that's. I'm not saying your dick is all over the camera. Like that's not what I'm trying to say, man. I was saying you do full-time streaming differently than we do, and yes, it's your whole income, so it's more important to you. But also Ripkins.
Are you still sponsored by razors, by the way, like for shaving?
Me?
Razors for shaving? Is that like Cheers for Gaming?
No, that was like it was like a 3-month thing.
Oh.
Why? What's that?
I was gonna make an edge joke, but never mind. No.
That's a competitor, you jackass.
All right, wrapping this topic up, I agree. And I'm not just agreeing because fuck it. I'm not even gonna make that comment.
This is a penmanship.
Make the comment now. Desra wouldn't shy away from it. Why the fuck are you?
No, it's worse, shying away or like giving into peer pressure. Like, what are you gonna do?
I'm not sucking Steven's dick. I'm agreeing with him because I genuinely agree with him. I understand where he's coming from, and I get what he's saying about the gray areas. At the same time, I get what Jeff is saying about there's certain things you don't do, and that's kind of where I'm on the edge about the Trick 2G situation. On one end, it's like Trick 2G. Why the fuck would you do something like that? It's an issue that people have to deal with. Everyone gets up in arms about it. Yeah, cool, fun. You had a stunt, but why'd you do it?
He was banned for 1 day. That's, I mean.
Well, right, and it wasn't.
We're talking about him on a Starcraft show. Like the fucking guy won. By the way, it's like
yeah,
not a big deal.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. Anyway, but at the same time, on Steven's end, and as I continue to stream more and more, I'm gonna be in that boat where I want to know what I can and can't get away with. The other day, I did that. I did that stream where I dressed up like a girl and streamed and got drunk, and I'm like, am I allowed to actually show myself doing a shot on stream? Am I allowed to show myself, like you can see my chest. I have a low cut fucking tank top on with fake boobs.
How do we not laugh? Like is making a serious point. He's like, well, I dressed up as a chick, got drunk on stream, and like, is that wrong?
Yes.
Is that so wrong?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, what are we defending right now? Like, if I want to dress like an elephant and have sex with a rhinoceros, who's also not really a rhinoceros, and we're not really having sex, is that bestiality? Is that bestiality?
Are we allowed to smoke on stream? Are we allowed to vape on stream? What about if you use an e-cigarette? Like, these are all questions that have been asked. Like, it sounds silly, but it's an actual, like, I think it's like it's a decent question to ask and have answered, like a black and white response, maybe.
Like
I agree with you on the scale of am I allowed to vape on stream, but like I'm laughing at the subjects that are coming up where like it's like I dressed as a chick, it was a low cut shirt, they could have seen my tits. I
gotta figure it out.
That's wrong.
I just connected the dots. Lycan's agreeing with Destiny because Lycan used to be in the army and he was planning to have his army buddies come fake SWAT him to get his channel boosted. So sorry to out you like this, Lycan, but it's not gonna work anymore, man.
I was a Marine, but fuck you.
Marine, sorry.
Anyway, we're going to take that as a perfect time to go to a break. When we come back, we'll talk about more shit. We'll see who other Jimmies we can wrestle, and we will continue with the late game episode 36. We'll see you in a little bit.